Welcome to the Bhakti Deep Dive. If you are preparing to navigate a really dense, treacherous jungle, you don't just wander in blind and hope for the best.
Yeah.
You need a highly accurate map, an exact starting coordinate, and a clear destination. And today we are opening up a high-stakes, ancient spiritual map.
Right, absolutely. Because without establishing both exactly where you are and exactly where you're trying to go, even the most profound philosophy it quickly becomes disorienting. I mean, a map is really only as good as your ability to orient yourself on it.
Exactly. And our mission for you today is to unpack the intricate opening chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now, we know you're likely already familiar with the foundational texts of this tradition, but today we are drilling into the highly systematized roadmap that this specific chapter lays out. We're tracing the exact progression from neophyte orientation through active service all the way to ultimate perfection.
It is a remarkable progression, too. And along the route, we'll analyze the historical lineage that meticulously preserved this science, the absolute necessity and functional role of a spiritual guide, the 6 principles of reality, the mechanics of material illusion, and most importantly, how this framework actually shifts your day-to-day operational life.
Right, because theory without application is just, trivia. So let's start with the map makers. The text places massive authority on the Gaudiya Vaishnava lineage, and that's rooted historically in the regions of Bengal and Orissa, linked to the Madhvacharya disciplic succession.
Mm-hmm.
And it is entirely centered on Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Since our listeners know the historical basics of his appearance roughly 500 years ago, what's crucial here is why this specific lineage matters for the progression it maps out.
Well, it matters profoundly because this lineage doesn't just offer abstract liberation or a mere release from suffering. It offers a highly specific, elevated form of spontaneous spiritual love. And to guide a practitioner there, it breaks psychological and spiritual development into 3 distinct stages.
Okay, 3 stages.
Yeah, and it correlates each stage with the worship of 3 specific deities in Vrindavana. So the first is Madana Mohana. This represents the starting line. It's really about reestablishing a forgotten relationship and actively nullifying material attachments.
So I want to drill into the how of that for a second. How does focusing on Madana Mohana functionally rewire a person's attachments? I mean, it's one thing to say, detach from material sense gratification.
Right.
But human psychology naturally resists brute force detachment.
Oh, completely. It rebels against it.
Right. If you just tell yourself to stop desiring things, you usually end up obsessing over them way more.
That is exactly why brute force willpower is not the mechanism here. Willpower eventually leads to exhaustion and, inevitably, relapse. The mechanism is actually a fundamental shift in orientation.
Okay, a shift in orientation. How so?
Well, in the conditioned material state, the practitioner is operating under the deep illusion that they are the center of the universe, they are the ultimate enjoyer. Worshipping Madana Mohana is the active, daily practice of surrender. It is acknowledging complete ignorance.
Wow. Acknowledging ignorance.
Yeah, and by directing attention to this specific form of the divine, the practitioner begins to experience a higher spiritual taste. That higher taste naturally makes lower material sense gratification just seem bland in comparison.
That makes a lot of sense. So the attachment isn't severed by aggressively cutting it. It naturally withers because it's replaced by something infinitely more satisfying.
Exactly. You don't have to force it.
Okay, so once that foundational rewiring happens, you don't just sit in a state of neutral detachment. The text moves the practitioner to the intermediate platform, which is Govinda. And this is the stage of active transcendental service. It's moving from detaching from the material to strongly attaching to the spiritual.
Right. Govinda translates to the reservoir of all pleasure for the senses. So at this intermediate stage, the practitioner is no longer constantly fighting the downward gravity of material desires. They're actually utilizing their senses, their time, and their energy in service.
Which is a huge shift.
It is. It represents strong, habit-forming devotion.
Which eventually leads to the perfection stage, right?
Yeah.
Gopinatha.
Yeah.
This is where the practitioner appreciates the divine in the most intimate, blissful form. It actually reminds me a lot of the process of learning a complex skill, like a new language.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
The progression from rigid rules to natural fluency.
Exactly. Like first, you have to humbly admit, absolutely nothing. You surrender to the grammar rules and the alphabet, and that's the Madana Mohana stage. You have to break down your old assumptions about how sentences should even be structured.
Right. You're just trying to get your bearings.
Yeah. Then you reach the Govinda stage, where you actively practice speaking, It takes immense effort, you make mistakes, but you are actively using the language in service of communication. Finally, you reach Gopinatha. You aren't, translating the rules in your head anymore. You're just experiencing the joy, the humor, and the poetry of the language naturally.
That's spot on. It is the shift from conscious incompetence to conscious competence and finally to unconscious competence. It's a seamless progression. But, and this is a big but, there is a massive caveat established right in the opening verses.
Oh, right.
The text asserts that you cannot make this progression. You cannot even properly begin the Madana Mahana stage, relying solely on your own cognitive abilities or reading comprehension.
Which brings us to the text's uncompromising stance on guidance. The progression is deemed practically impossible without a spiritual master, a guru. And the text delineates two distinct functional roles here, right? The initiating spiritual master and the instructing spiritual master.
Yes, and this distinction is vital for a serious practitioner to grasp. The initiating spiritual master is the one who formally brings the student into the lineage, imparting the spiritual mantra. And the strict, non-negotiable rule here is that a student can only have one initiating master.
Only one.
Only one. Conversely, for ongoing, nuanced guidance and continuous course correction through all of life's complexities, a student can have unlimited instructing spiritual masters.
But both are considered identical manifestations of the divine. And the text uses a really powerful image here. It says, trying to cross the ocean of material existence without a formally initiated master is like trying to sail a ship without a rudder.
It's a terrifying thought, honestly.
It is. Because you might have sails, you might have a strong wind, but you have absolutely zero control over your final destination.
Yeah, without the rudder, you are entirely at the mercy of the ocean's currents, which represent the unseen, incredibly powerful forces of material nature. You will inevitably be blown off course no matter how hard you row.
So I want to play devil's advocate for a moment, just thinking about the modern practitioner. We live in an era of, hyper-individualized DIY spirituality. We love a bespoke approach.
Oh, absolutely, the cafeteria approach.
Yes, we pull meditation techniques from one tradition, breathwork from another, and philosophical frameworks from an audio show. So the idea of surrendering absolutely to just one initiating master feels incredibly restrictive to the modern mind.
Sure, it rubs people the wrong way.
It really does. It feels like locking yourself into a single academic advisor for your entire spiritual PhD without any option to switch if you think you know better. Why is this singular surrender so non-negotiable?
Well, because the modern DIY approach is inherently flawed when dealing with the absolute truth. Think about it. When you curate your own spiritual path, picking and choosing what resonates with you, you are still acting as the supreme judge of what is valid.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You are still sitting comfortably in the center of your universe. The ego remains completely intact. So the requirement of one initiating master forces the ultimate surrender of that ego. However, to really understand this, we have to look closely at how the text defines the guru.
Right, because it's not what people typically think.
Exactly. The guru is not a human tyrant acting out of personal ambition. The bona fide spiritual master is explicitly described as the servitor godhead.
Servitor godhead. Okay, so their identity is defined entirely by their service, not by dominance or power.
Precisely. They are a transparent, functional representative of the divine, utterly devoid of material motives. Their exclusive, singular concern is the student's safe passage back to Godhead.
So it's not an ego trip.
Not at all. In fact, if a so-called master is acting out of a desire for wealth, prestige, or control over others, the text explicitly labels them an offender. True surrender is not submitting to a flawed human ego. It is submitting to the function of divine guidance operating purely through that person.
That fundamentally shifts the paradigm. You aren't surrendering your autonomy to another person's whims. You are surrendering to the compass needle itself.
That's a great way to phrase it.
And if the spiritual master is a manifestation of the divine here in the material world, that implies the divine isn't just some isolated entity sitting on a throne somewhere far away. It implies a dynamic, active, multifaceted presence. So how else does this reality manifest?
This is where the opening of the Chaitanya Charitamrita gets incredibly expansive. It organizes ultimate reality into a comprehensive ecosystem of 6 principles.
6 principles, okay.
Yeah, the absolute truth is not an empty void, nor is it a solitary, lonely figure. It is a dynamic, eternal unity of 6 diversities.
Let's break down how this ecosystem actually functions. We just covered the first principle, which is the spiritual masters, both initiating and instructing. They represent the principle of divine guidance. But then the text lists the devotees of the Lord as the second principle, describing them directly as the energy of the Lord.
And this reveals something really profound about the nature of devotion. It means the practitioners themselves, when operating in pure, unalloyed devotion, are an integral part of the divine ecosystem. The energy and the energetic source are distinct yet non-different.
Okay, got it. What's the third?
The third principle consists of the incarnations, or avatars. These are specific manifestations that descend into the material world with targeted missions, usually to reclaim conditioned souls and reestablish forgotten spiritual principles.
Then we have the fourth principle, which is the plenary portions. Now, for a listener who might be, fuzzy on that specific theological term, what exactly is a plenary portion? How does it differ from just a standard living entity?
So, a plenary portion is a direct expansion of the Supreme Lord that possesses the full potency of the original. Think of it like a candle.
Okay, a candle.
If you take one original candle and use it to light a second, third, and fourth candle, those new candles burn with the exact same heat, the exact same brightness, and the exact same chemical composition as the first. They are fully potent. Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. These plenary portions govern and maintain different aspects of the cosmic manifestation, yet they are all non-different from the original source. A regular living entity, on the other hand, is more like a tiny spark. It shares the quality of the fire, but not the full quantity or power.
That candle analogy clarifies it perfectly. Okay, so the fifth principle focuses on the energies, specifically the internal spiritual potencies.
Yes. These internal energies orchestrate the transcendental pastimes and relationships in the spiritual realm. They are the active, conscious forces of divine knowledge, eternity, and bliss.
And the final one?
The sixth principle is the primeval Lord himself, the ultimate source of all the other five. He is the original candle from which everything else is lit.
So if we look at these six principles together, it paints a picture of a reality that is inherently relational. It's bursting with personality, energy, expansions, and loving devotion.
It really is.
The ultimate goal isn't to meditate your way into a featureless void or merge into static light. It's to actively enter into this thriving, eternal entourage. It completely reframes the concept of spiritual perfection. Perfection is participating in a dynamic, eternal relationship, not achieving a state of static isolation.
But, I think we have to address the elephant in the room here, if the ultimate reality is this vibrant relational spiritual ecosystem, what exactly is this world we are sitting in right now? Because our day-to-day material reality often feels disconnected, frustrating, and frankly, anything but a perfect, blissful ecosystem.
Oh, absolutely. And this introduces the core philosophical tension of the text.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fundamental distinction between the absolute truth and material illusion, which is known as Maya.
Maya, right.
The text defines the absolute truth as the ultimate substance. It exists completely independently. It is self-sustaining. Maya, conversely, is defined as the relative truth, meaning it only exists in relation to the absolute.
Meaning it has no independent existence of its own. It's entirely contingent.
Exactly. The sources use a natural phenomenon to explain this relationship. The absolute truth is compared to the sun or self-effulgent light. Maya is compared to darkness or reflection.
Okay, darkness.
Yeah, darkness is not a standalone substance. You cannot fill a jar with darkness or measure its mass. Darkness is merely the absence of light.
Right. When you face the sun, you are in the light.
Yeah.
When you turn your back to it, you cast a shadow and experience darkness. The material world is wrapped in this contingent darkness, which is why it constantly requires external, temporary sources to illuminate it. We need the sun, the moon, electricity, fire, but the spiritual realm produces its own light.
And Maya actively functions to keep the conditioned soul captivated by the reflection, purposefully distracted from the substance.
You know, when I was reviewing the notes on Maya being a reflection of the real substance, it struck me that it operates exactly like being in a movie theater.
Oh, the cinematic experience is a highly accurate parallel. How does it align with the text's definition of relative truth for you?
Well, think about the mechanics of a theater. You sit down in a dark room and stare at a screen, and the screen itself is just a flat, lifeless piece of fabric. But when the light from the projector hits it, it displays immense drama, action, romance, and tragedy. As the audience, we get so deeply absorbed in the drama of that reflection, the material illusion, that our heart rate spikes during a car chase. We weep during a breakup. We feel genuine anger at the villain.
We completely buy into it.
We do. We become completely captivated by the shadows, entirely forgetting that there's a projector in the back of the room casting the light that makes the whole illusion possible.
And the text explicitly warns against this exact phenomenon. It warns the practitioner not to be captivated by the wonderful, dramatic, and sometimes terrifying activities of Maya because they are just perverted reflections of the supreme reality.
They aren't real.
Right. The joys and miseries on the movie screen are temporary flashes of light and shadow. They're not the enduring substance.
Which is why it's so easy to get lost. The movie is incredibly convincing, and the emotional stakes feel entirely real while you're sitting in the dark.
Precisely. Which brings us to the most crucial part of any philosophical framework. How does the practitioner actually live differently starting today?
Yeah, the application.
Right. How does understanding these 6 principles and the nature of Maya change a Tuesday morning commute or a high-pressure meeting at work?
Because philosophy must culminate in practical application. And the text provides explicit directives on how to operationalize these teachings daily. The first crucial step is a negative injunction, avoiding what the text calls cheating religions.
Yes.
For an audience familiar with the broad strokes of Eastern philosophy, we know this refers to abandoning 3 specific pursuits: fruitive work, mental speculation, and mystic yogic powers. But let's dig deeper into why these are considered cheating. Why are these the default traps for a practitioner?
Because they are highly sophisticated methods of remaining in the center of your own universe. Let's look at them through the lens of your movie theater analogy.
Okay, let's do it.
Fruitive work, which means acting purely for material gain, wealth, or elevation to a heavenly standard of life, is essentially trying to buy a better seat in the theater, or perhaps a larger bucket of popcorn. You are still completely invested in the movie.
Right, you're just trying to make the illusion more comfortable.
Exactly. Then you have mental speculation, trying to decode the universe entirely through dry logic and intellectual gymnastics. That is like sitting in the theater trying to deduce the exact focal length of the projector lens while completely ignoring the plot. It provides an illusion of intellectual control.
Wow, yes.
And seeking mystic yogic powers is simply an attempt to become a minor director of the film yourself.
That makes perfect sense. All 3 of those paths keep your attention glued to the screen. They don't turn you around to face the projector. They only provide temporary relief or temporary control over the miseries of material life, which is why they are cheating you out of the actual goal.
They distract from the singular objective, which is cultivating spontaneous, eternal, loving service. So if a practitioner abandons those, what are the positive daily actions? The sources highlight 3 primary practices.
What's first one?
First is submissive hearing from realized souls. This isn't just passively listening to an audio show while doing the dishes. It's actively and submissively receiving knowledge through that unbroken disciplic succession we discussed earlier.
It's receiving the map coordinates directly from someone who's actually walked the territory and knows the pitfalls.
Precisely.
The second practice is associating with pure devotees, and this ties directly back to the 6 principles. If the devotees are literally the energy of the divine, then associating with them is how you catch the spark. It's an active transfer of spiritual energy.
And the third practice, which often requires immense discipline, is intentionally avoiding bad company. The text is unambiguous here. It specifically identifies 2 types of association to avoid: gross materialists who are entirely focused on sense gratification, and unbelievers who rely solely on their own mental whims.
Because their influence acts as gravity. If you spend all your time with people entirely absorbed in the movie, their panic, their excitement, and their drama will drag your attention right back to the screen.
The overarching shift the text demands is moving from a mindset of extraction to one of contribution. Material life is characterized by trying to extract enjoyment from the reflection. Daily spiritual life is acting purely out of a desire to serve that divine ecosystem.
It's the full journey. It's moving from Madana Mohana, recognizing we are hypnotized by the illusion and surrendering our false sense of control. Moving through Govinda, actively changing our habits, our associations, and our actions to serve. All to eventually reach Govinatha, that natural, unforced state of spiritual joy. It is a complete systematic reprogramming of how we operate in the world.
And it requires the profound courage to look away from the mesmerizing, overwhelming drama of the screen and actively seek the source of the light.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over as you navigate the rest of your day. If our material reality is just a contingent reflection, and true reality is this eternal, vibrant, relational ecosystem, how does that change the way you view the mundane frustrations right in front of you?
It changes everything.
It really does. If you looked at your daily struggles, the traffic jams, the stressful emails, the interpersonal conflicts, not as permanent terrifying problems, but simply as passing shadows on a movie screen, how much lighter would your day be? Remember the projector in the back of the room? Thank you for listening to the Bhakti Deep Dive.